Hello and welcome to Lands Unknown. I'm Will, the world builder formerly known as, and today we are continuing our close climate study of the Tyche Basin. Just going to see if some folks are going to filter in, do an audio check. Oh wow, 4 people already. Excellent. Sound up in there. Tell me how the audio sounds. This is the new mic. This is the setup that we're going with. Oak Ridge, hey, welcome back. As you can see here, I did not finish the outline, but that's because there are some geologic features. Audio is crispy. I hope that's good. Oh, hey or two. Kate, hi. Crispy audio, good. Okay. It's clipping. Oh no. What the heck? Yeah, I was aligned the video as well. Oh no. That's unfortunate. It may be because I'm trying to do a lot of stuff. Shame. Well, I'm going to get rid of the video anyway, but I do not want the audio to be behind the video. All right, let's try something. All right, so I am back. Are we getting a bit of lag? Let me know if there's still an issue. It's good now. Oh, okay. All right, audio's fine now. Now I just have to see if the iPad will reconnect. Okay. I seem to have. Okay, there we go. There we go. Technical difficulties in my YouTube thingy here. I spent a lot of time last week trying to figure this out. Okay. So please let me know if the audio stops sounding good or if things get choppy or what have you. Triassic, it is a low key headache for sure. All right. And then, of course, 7 minutes into the scream, I also recommend that I can throw things up like this. Yeah. Okay. So let's. All right. Are we back? Yes. Okay. Great. I have to wait for, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute before I can see confirmation. So last time I said I was going to finish the outline. I didn't finish the outline, but we have some interesting geologic stuff to look at afterwards. But last time, what we did do is pick a projection, and I picked the Elbers projection, and I did that because it had the least amount of distortion for the prominent features of the Tyche Basin, particularly the central. Gotta find my layers. The central island here, which has a very distinct look to it, which I like. We brought in the various temperature maps and talked about the movement of ocean currents within the basin, or surface currents within the basin. And in most cases, your surface currents aren't going to move all that much. Uh, there are only going to really be a handful of places where you need to look at significant reversals. Um, on Earth, we have most of those are in marginal seas, but one of the, in bays and those sorts of things. Um, I think one of the more significant ones that people think about is the reversal of the currents in the North Indian Ocean, particularly in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, um, where they flow one way during the summer, well, 9 months out of the year, and then for 3 months of the year, they flow in the opposite direction. And that is due to the monsoon, and that oscillation that happens between the um, low pressure system in the summer and that high pressure system, the Siberian high, in the winter. We also see some of these changes in marginal seas like the, South China Sea and stuff like that. So it's not, just there, but it tends to be these smaller bodies. And what's important though is that the subsurface currents stay the same. So the surface currents may change, but 15 or more meters below the surface, the currents have changed. The surface currents changing is enough to impact the temperature. But we also see that in the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean basin has a general circulation for most of the year. And then parts of the year, some of that circulation changes at the surface, but the subsurface currents stay the same. So we're looking at that and seeing where we could apply a bit of some CSA, which, is, kind of reluctant to do because it's really going to only appear, in a very thin strip along the coast. And you can see the brush, right? Yeah, there we go. Thin strip along the coast. We also looked at these wind maps here. One thing I will say about the January map is that, let's bring up and see, I brought all of these in here so I don't have to switch between my screens. I am learning. Here we go. So in here, one thing to think about is that there could very well, especially in January, have a high pressure zone form in the Agathie, in the north in the Agathie. I don't know how significant it would be, but it could form between east and west Basara. What this would change is relatively minor. Let's go over here. That's way too big. All right. What this would change, marginally, of course, because the winds would still, do what they're doing, right? However, depending on whether the thank you, Jake. Everyone's listening to the audio for the audio today. What this would change is that we would have some wind whipping around this way. And depending, because, this low pressure system could shift slightly over the winter and over the, it would shift slightly over the winter. And we could see these high pressure winds moving in and hitting the west coasts of these islands with, some precipitation. So that's something to think about because we're looking at averages, but we're also thinking about some of the different kinds of events like seasonal storms and some of these precipitation changes that can occur. Hey, where we're at currently. Just reviewing something I was thinking about with some of the pressure changes when we're talking about the basin. So yeah, so there could be some precipitation along these coasts. And I mean, you know, if we're looking at the circulation here and we're mapping this out, it goes like that as well. So if we kind of, these would kind of receive parallel winds, which isn't always the case, especially because you have some orthographic winds as well, because we have, let's look at this one. Right. So we'd also have some orthographic winds. Because you've got, you know, some hill, I believe that's what, 1 to 2,000 kilometers in elevation. I can check. Yes, 1 to 2,000 kilometers in elevation. And what would happen there is when these mountains heat up, their temperature of the ground on the side of the mountain would be warmer than the air at that elevation. And what that causes is, you know, a very localized low pressure area to form. If you want to very quickly, so we have a mountain, you know, Mr. Sun is heating the mountain. The air is, you know, cold because, you know, it's a mountain. And, you know, as we know, the air temperature with altitude drops depending on the humidity by, was it 6 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So the air may be, you know, 12 degrees Celsius, but the heating of the side of the mountain makes it, you know, 15 degrees Celsius, let's say. And that difference, that relative difference, will make the air rise here, and that will cause air to flow in this way. And if you are beside some water, that will start picking up precipitation, which it will then dump on the side. So there are like very localized effects like that. That won't be the bulk of the precipitation that the area receives. And of course, you know, that won't be the bulk of the precipitation that an area receives. And we also have to think about more like the stronger regional surface winds, right? But it is, you know, something that regularly occurs. And the other thing to consider here is sea climates. Mr. Sun needs a smiley face. Oh, of course. Okay. I think I deleted that, didn't I? Oh, no, I'll bring him back. Here we go. There we go. Mr. Sun now has a smiley face. Let it be said I read the chat. Always wonder how rain shadow works. That makes sense. Yeah, so for the rain shadow, let's find a big ocean spot here. You've got your water, got your land, you've got your mountains, and then you've got stuff on the other side. Now, because, and now we have religion. Yes, wonderful. Sunny instead of Clippy. So we're going to have another religious sun here. And the sun's rays are going to bit down. That is going to cause water to rise. We're going to get clouds. Everything is black. I'm not going to switch it for this. The clouds move this way. And as the cloud ascends, the area, so this is like the atmosphere up here, and, you know, there's the ground. That area compresses, and as it rises, that compression and the change in temperature causes the precipitation to occur and the condensation, right? So we have a change in temperature. Colder air masses hold less moisture, and then, you know, we also have the same amount of air in the column taking up a smaller portion. So that causes the cloud
to precipitate. Then it expands back out, and there is now, there's still precipitation. There's still, moisture in the air, but there's less moisture. So, you're not going to see as much precipitation in here, but then when it hits these mountains here, it's going to start precipitating again. But once that happens and it's on, the other side of the range, and oftentimes with mountain ranges, like this happens several times because, there are going to be, several ranges in a significant, progeny. You tend to have air that's rushing down here, that's quite warm, and it's also going to be quite dry because it has precipitated out. And this is where we get like fawn winds and stuff like that. So these places tend to be, more arid than the places over here. However, you can still have, this mountain over here, the sun heats it up. This can still be warmer than the air around it, causing some localized low pressure situation. But the thing is, if there's wind coming from this deserty area, there's no moisture there to begin with, so it doesn't really do anything, right? Like, the moisture is coming from the ocean or, large lakes, seas, those sorts of things. So when we're looking here and we go back to our precipitation map, yeah, we can see that the wind is generally moving this way, and we've got, mountains. Where we go? Here we go. Got the mountains here, got mountains here. I mean, this stretch here isn't particularly significant. I mean, there's going to be, some contribution of moisture to that. Let's actually, I do have Gplace up on my computer to measure. I can see how wide that is. 130 kilometers. Yeah, it's not insignificant. But it'll really depend on the temperature of the sea in that area there. But that being said, we're going to see, a reasonable amount of precipitation in that area. And what led me to this train of thought is that sea climates usually don't need that much precipitation. Some have like 400 millimeters, others have 600 milliliters. I think there's a CS climates don't need all that much precipitation, So like, in the Mediterranean, there are a bunch of regions that, 400 to like 700 millimeters is quite common. So, we can expect that for a lot of the Tyche Sea. There is on Vancouver Island, Port Alberni, which is in the interior of the island, receives an absurd amount of precipitation for a sea climate, CS climate. It has like almost 2,000 millimeters of precipitation, most of which is between like September and February, October and February, really. And, but again, because it's, on the island and there's the, just the climate regime we have, there is in the summer, there's still like a decent amount of precipitation, but the driest summer month has, 30 something millimeters, which allows it to classify the CS climate, because in order to be a CS climate, the wettest winter month needs to have 3 times the amount of precipitation as the driest summer month, and the driest summer month needs to have less than 40 millimeters. I believe that's Köppen-Geiger. It's different in Tuatha. Yes, Port Alberni has a lot of rain. Question only somewhat related. Do you happen to know any source for realistic tides? Um, I would, but that would be a different. Uh, that would be a very different stream. But I will think about that. So yes, let's talk about here. We're going to have a decent amount of precipitation. The reason why this is a CS region and not a CF region by and large is because let's turn these off. Group those together. Great. And let's group these together as well. Cool. We do have this high pressure system. So the wind is, if we think about, boop. Okay, so you have the ground, you've got your mountains, got your water here. The wind is kind of coming down and spiraling outwards. And when this is happening, you just don't really have those winds that are above here. Or if you do, you've got the warm air rising over the land and the air falling and moving across the surface over the water. So there isn't all that much. There isn't going to be that much precipitation happening in the center of this basin, but we do see it along the sides. And I believe for the did I do it right on the map? I did. Always got to watch my layers. Boop. And I believe that's why some of those areas over there are CF. Yeah, that's why those regions are CF, because they would be receiving some of the sides of that. All right, so let's move back to just linking something's good enough. I don't want to hijack the stream. My oceanography is decent, but I never covered in speculative fiction. Yeah, I think like part of the issue with tides and like doing the resonance and stuff like that, I mean, I think that would be best done with probably, I don't know, if we have like tide simulator or something like that, exoplanetide or something like that, that would be the best way to do it for me. I don't have a way to go through it in any other way. Like I usually look at tide models and look at various regions and apply like sort of heuristic rules of thumbs to things. There we go. So back to our little map here. Something I did want to show, which I think would be fun, is I wanted to show you the Elbers map with the outline here. So this is the size of the Tyche Basin in relation to Earth. And this is the same projection at the same height, all the same, the same, exact same the exact same. So the Tyche Basin is as large as the Mediterranean, including the Black Sea, a bunch of Southern Europe, and a large portion of North and East and Central Africa. So this is a very big body of water. And, the landmass in here that makes up the major islands. Well, I mean, the main thing here isn't really an island. It's a peninsula. Is, smaller than Europe, but the European subcontinent, but it is pretty significant. That's a lather. Yes, it is a very, very large body of water. So when it's reminding me of the Tyche. Oh yeah, here we go. It's reminding me of the Tethys with the Cimmerian terrains in the middle of it. That is exactly what inspired this, and that's why it's called the Tyche. Tyche being one of the daughters of Tethys. Um, and it was something I thought would be very interesting to include. It's not something that I usually see in world building projects. Uh, what's it like compared to the Gulf of Mexico? Oh, I mean, I think the Gulf of Mexico would fit. Oops, bonk. I mean, the Gulf of Mexico would probably fit, within here. So it is quite large. Yes, rather large body of water. And so when I'm going to be doing the satellite map, that, overlays it. So this gets a sense of the scale. So this map is at, a larger scale than the map of Arukia, right? Because, Arukia is more equivalent to like the European or Indian subcontinent in size. Meanwhile, Tyche Basin is a very large region. But this is kind of what I'm going to be going for. We're not going to have as much detail in the mountain ranges and those sorts of things as the Arukian map. Maybe if I wanted to zoom in at some point and solely focus on the main terrain there, that would be, when I'm, yeah, that would be when I'm doing something that's more close. And the final thing to share before I continue making that outline, and the reason why I'm going to be making the outline, continue making the outline on the stream, is because I took some of the data from G-plates and the G-plate sim and put it onto some note paper here. Apologies for my cursive if folks can't read that. I need to stay hydrated. One sec. Some water. Sorry. Tea from my Lands Unknown mug, and then some water. And I hope I moved far enough back so people didn't hear me drinking. Please let me know. I want to have good mic discipline, and yes. Yeah, so here we have a sketch of some of the geologic stuff going on in the Tyche Basin. Let me add, I still got that layer there. Black will be good in this situation. So for the terrains, not very usual world building projects. Yeah, I was pretty excited about that. Oh, thanks, Jake. I like the colors too. I think yellow and purple for doing highlighting is pretty nice, especially when I'm doing quick sketches. I think I'll have some of that in the footnotes video for the biogeography stuff that will be coming up at the end of January. I think some of the critters, one of the critters has already been posted for the Patreon and the Ko-fi for people who have subscribed there. I think there'll be another one coming out this week. And then, and then like the final video at the end of January, which, if you sign up to the Explorer level, you can see at least a week early, or at most a week early. Usually I try to post them on Monday and then they come out on Friday. Okay, what do we got here? Yeah, so we've got Zalea over here. We've got Arukia down here. We've got the Agathe over here. And we've got Lanea all up in here. Some of the story behind this. So we do have a subduction zone along western Zalea on sort of the, the Urzine side of the, no, not Urzine, Sesmetrine side of the Metrades there. And what's happening is that these terrains have been ripped from this coast. And we have a couple failed rips, or a couple of these rifts that stopped and then started again. So this is one of those. So that's the first one, where this rifted, and kind of spread apart. This part here was being pulled into the subduction zone, and then Polomia hit Lanea, and that caused some jazz to happen. It caused some other rifts to occur, and there was a very brief rifting between this major terrain here and this smaller terrain there, and so a final rift that we have, which is over here right now. And why that history of rifting is important is because there were some, there was some volcanism that occurred in these areas. So we're going to have a string of islands on or near this rift where there was volcanism and there were hotspots and those sorts of things. But those islands are going to be quite small by this point, and there's going to be a lot of atolls and those sorts of things that separate this terrain and that terrain. And then between the major terrain and this kind of northern island terrain, we have a more recent failed rift with its own volcanism.
Your drawing looks like it has ears. Oh, where?
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, I see. The basin looks like it has ears, right? Like,
oh yeah. I see. And then we got the ears here. Yeah, kind of looks like a, I don't know, like a canid or something like that, or a bear or something. That's fun. Those islands seems like wonderful holiday destinations. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, it looks like a wolf. Excellent. Maybe that'll, help us come up with some ideas for the name of the basin in some of the later languages, though. I mean, wouldn't necessarily have maps like this per se. The way that they'd judge space and how they communicate that through maps would probably be, quite different than this, but fun idea. And then along this active mid-ocean ridge, we would see a good deal of volcanism. We'd see a bunch of islands running around that. So that is one thing. There's also going to be some islands along here. And finally, there was a hotspot that emerged between on the ocean plate between Lanea and Polomia before they collided. And because Basera is generally moving this way, so like a northerly direction, these hotspots are now moving. Well, the hotspots are staying still. But as the plate moves over the hotspots, it causes volcanism. So in this basin here, we are going to see some islands off that kind of, ring it a little bit. That going to add some variety to the coast there. And of course, there's also going to be some dormant volcanoes further in, coming from where I guess the Polomian ice sheet is. But hotspots are very local features, and a lot of these islands were not going to appear on the large map. So now it's gonna kind of take the time to now we're going to take the time to kind of include those in the outline. So, just keeping that in mind and doing these sketches, thinking about things in advance, where you want things to go is super useful when you're doing this kind of work. I mean, you can, look at the footnotes video that was released what is it, first week of January, for, some more of the commentary and process that. It really lets you think through and kind of plan out the geologic history and kind of meet your goals, for, what you want the world to look like. What do we got here? Plain spotter margin. Oh, I absolutely imagine the Romanesque scroll maps this area. Maybe the fingers kind of cliche, but it will still work. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they're going to have some very interesting um, maps here. It is like, let's go back to the main map. Get rid of these geologic notes. Throw the bait back on. Yeah. So at the largest kind of distance, was it here? We've got like 2,000 kilometers. We've got some, smaller distances throughout. But what is interesting here is, especially for like early seafaring, folks tend to stick relatively near the coast. So I could imagine a map that is, more or less. Let's ignore that for a sec. We can use what? Have a map that's like do, and then along here, but you'd want to kind of exaggerate this area, to make it more obvious that people are not regularly traveling through that basin of the Tyche Sea, just because it's very far from land. Usually, especially around the Mediterranean, in the Mediterranean world, and other places like that, they would be, yeah, they'd have sail power, but they'd also be rowing. They would pull in every night, like they beach the vessel, if they could, in order to, everybody gets out and sleeps on land, and then you push it out. You push the ship out again in the morning, or boat, I suppose, and continue on your voyage. So knowing where it would be reasonable to do that and where it would be unreasonable to do that would be very important for sea maps at the time. Okay, so let us grab a technical pen, change the color back to black, go back to our outline, throw this on. I'm going to finish doing the outline for these, and then we'll start including some of those smaller islands that we're going to be seeing. Somatic. Let me know. Somatic? I love seeing your process sketches for the project. Really help explain the thought process behind the features you put in the world. It's more evocative than just the still final map. Yeah, I do really like showing that. I mean, just I guess on YouTube, a lot of people like the showcases, whether it's like online showcases or various world building showcases, because you can just, see the world that's already done. And I think a lot of people are very attracted to that. But, for world builders, who are kind of in the weeds of it, seeing the process, I think is really helpful. And I've gotten some good feedback on that. And I also want to encourage people as well, like especially with the digital paintings I do. Like I've only been doing that, 6-7 months now. I mean, I've done traditional, analog art, on and off, and I had, some training at like an arts college in that, but it hasn't been very consistent until now. So, seeing that process and seeing me, work through that, I think can be really inspirational for folks especially those who are just starting out. Oh, yes, you agree. In the ways is a good way of putting it. Yeah, I've also been describing it as like inside baseball in a way. Like for the footnotes video, how many people are really going to be interested in, you know, the impacts of CO2 and, worlds that are colder or warmer, and what impacts that would have on the biogeography and that kind of thing, right? Like, you know, a lot of people who are, making a fantasy world or making it kind of like pre-industrial and are just kind of more or less going off of, I guess, vibes or intuition, ideas about what the medieval world is like. Always interested in new AMSI. Yeah. That's the, you know, that is the, I think it was Nikolai who sent me a message. She was like, very soothing. And I guess the names like Lanea, Zalea, Alea, like very melodic, like lullaby-ish. It's a very niche picture channel, a little more valuable. Oh, thank you so much. Though I think for the next footnotes video, it'll probably be introduced into the cycle. So my my original idea was I'd do a chapter every 2 months and then a footnote uh, after every, or part of a chapter every 2 months, and then I do a footnote after each chapter. But you know, doing one video a month is too much for me. So what is going to happen going forward at the end of January, there will be the chapter 2A, which is the wet winter, dry summer savanna biography. Then there'll be 2B in March, and then 2C in May, and then we'd have the footnotes video in like July, and then the appendix video after that. So it's just much more reasonable to do that. The issue is when it gets too interesting. I've been trying to listen to a book about India and it keeps getting too stimulating. Yeah, there's definitely a balance there, for sure. Um, but my podcasts that are my sleepy time podcasts, and then I'll fall asleep too. So, those are specifically for sleepy time. I don't listen to them any other time, though it's hard to fall asleep without them now. Even for my Earth Butt project, all the resources are invaluable. Love seeing your people's process. Oh, other people's process. Yeah, of course. I think that's why these streams are interesting. And the last one did pretty well, actually. So I'm quite happy with that. Oh yeah, no, I burning myself out with the schedule. Yeah, no, I want to keep it fun and keep it going. And part of preventing the burnout too is, I think, if I'm doing biogeography on one thing, like if I do biogeography for the videos, doing the physical geography and doing this climate, climate study or physical geography study is, quite useful. All right, so let me crack in. Make sure I'm on the right layer. Yes, wonderful. Oh, that is the... And I do want to be careful that I am not getting rid of any land area when I do this, because sometimes that does happen. Now you just let best of maritime diesel and continuously running AC. Yeah, I can't do that. I need to have need to have some of my podcasts. Seeing other people's inspiration gets back to the grind when I start losing steam. Yeah, and it can be nice to, see how other people are engaging in world building, and especially for some projects, like when you see the final output, like you're not seeing the decisions that went into it and the process of it happening. And so, often when we talk about world building, we're not talking about the process of world building or the practices of world building. We're talking about our, we're often talking about the final product, the world that has been built. Um, so, watching the world builder's log from Edgar, I thought was always like a very interesting innovation on that, because you're actually watching someone uh, doing the world building, like you're seeing the process, and you're seeing someone talk through their process, especially on the streams. Um, and I think that is particularly invaluable. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, that's fun. That one is not fun. Thank you. I think there is another island there. I can check later. Because sometimes how the outlines work is that it doesn't really show you the... if you just go to in Photoshop, or if you just, select the layer and hit outline, sometimes it covers up some of the smaller things that you were doing. So it's, always worth going back and checking later. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of keep true to the shapes and, not make them too, I don't know, rounded. Nice. Great. And at the same time, try not to lose very much in the way of land area, because that's something that can also happen. All right, let's get rid of that one and let's throw that one on instead, because that white line can sometimes get in the way there. Okay, so there's actually two right beside each other. There we go. And I'm making them black right now, just just to distinguish them from the background. But I will probably change it to white when I start actually building like the faux sat map terrain. But it is nice to know. Yeah, so the audio seems to be working with Chrome specifically. With Firefox, it seems to be choppy or have a delay. So I'll just have to keep that in mind for next time. Yeah, I don't know what about Firefox was causing the video to delay as well. Because it was working just fine when I was using my headset mic. But, the headset mic was also picking up an awful lot of things I did not want it to pick up. And there's this kind of background noise that, didn't sound very good. Oh, this seems smooth. Yeah, that's good. And I'll listen to this later and, you know, sample parts of it and see what it sounds like. And I really like this island here. This one is particularly nice. And something that I'm thinking of doing is, if I ever do the callings for people around here, they probably will not distinguish, the landform between an island and the terrain. They'll just be like, oh, well, this guy is a big X and this one is a small X. They'll probably just have a landmass within the Tyche Basin is referred to as X rather than, distinguishing a specific island. Because I don't think it'd be particularly relevant to them. I do want to look at my map quickly. Let's see. Yeah, I don't mind that being smaller ones, and this can be a bigger one. Yeah, you want a decent amount of variation in the size, of your islands. You don't want them all to be like the same size. I mean, these aren't islands, they're terrains, but like, they are effectively islands. You don't want the land masses to all be the same. It doesn't introduce a lot of visual character. But also, if you look at islands, oh, sorry, I caught reading something. Still hicking up a bit sometimes, but fine enough that's not really a problem to listen to. Might want to do something different for a video. Yeah, I'm gonna be, on the video, I just go straight into Editions, Adobe Editions, and I record it through that now. It may also be the angle of my mic, so I may have to figure out the kind of desktop situation. But yeah, for the video, recording it into Editions and then processing all the clicks and other stuff out of it, and then importing that into Adobe Rush, which is like easy Premiere, has been the way that I've been going through it. I think the issue here is that it's going through the mic and then being processed by StreamYard, and there may be some issues between the two. So, still something to parse out. All right, so we have finished doing the outline, at least right now for those. So now I am going to, what time is it? Let's duplicate that because I'm now going to move it. Where's that? Yeah, there we go. Okay. And I'll probably, stretch this a little bit, but this kind of gives an idea of where stuff is supposed to be. You know what? I will do that right now. Let's distort. And then, no. Maybe distort's not the best idea. Maybe warp is a better idea here. Yeah, that helps. Sounds like network issue on like video game comms, so probably StreamYard. So yeah. I don't know. I may consider running running an Ethernet cable or something like that to the room, so I get like a hard line. That may help. What is this? Oh yeah, that was some of the ocean stuff. All right. So let's do that. But first, I'm going to take a quick stretch and break. I will be back in like 2 minutes. Let's do this. Whoop. It's fine. All right, BRB. And we are back. Yes, the sun. But let me check if I can do something else in StreamYard to change this.
So before I was struggling with StreamYard. Ah, it says reduce background noise. I do not want that. I don't want StreamYard to do anything with my audio. Maybe that'll clear it up. Maybe if StreamYard has to like clip some of my sounds and things. Thank you. Welcome back to YouTube, Writer 2. All right, so we'll keep him there in case we need him next time. We'll probably need him next time. So I'm going to use this layer here to kind of plan out where I want these islands to be, because it's going to add like a very distinct character to it. Okay. So they do have to like generally go this way. Oh, that's not a great color for that. What's going on? Okay, here we go. So they do generally have to go this way, but I would probably want it to be more of a curve. I think is interesting. And I believe we already have. Yeah, we already got a bit of an interesting, and they don't have to. I'm not going to make it this, this tall. I'll probably make it a, just along here sort of thing. So if kind of comes off here, then we've got something here. I do want like Discord does the same thing with my mic if I turn on a suppress background noise feature. Excellent. Okay. So yeah, because I mean I have the Rude thing on, like that has its own processing. So like I really don't need StreamYard's processing. And I think the two may interfere with each other, so that may be the problem. And yeah, so I do want one of these to be kind of Hawaiian-esque, I suppose. So that could be the one that's over here. But I do want to know how big I should make that one. Because how big is Hawaii? Like 1,000 square kilometers? Something like that. Like the big island. Hawaii in particular. Because I think it's bigger than Samoa. Like the island of Samoa. Ah, 10,000 square kilometers. I see. I was off by a whole order of magnitude. That's fun. I remember the one though. We'll give myself credit for that. So if I let's see here. Yeah. All right. Then I think this should be, about that size. How big is that? Yeah, that's probably about 10. Okay. And maybe this one is where kind of the 3 hotspots that are part of this cluster converged.
Maybe something like that. So we do still have that kind of shape. No. Though the ones on the northeast should be smaller than the one. Yeah, we should. Than the ones over here. That is the main critique I currently have myself. All right. Okay. I do maybe want one that's more central here. All right, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it's too wide. Too wide. Or tall. I don't know. Whatever it is. Needs to... Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's definitely the case. Okay, I can also have liquefy. How big is that one? Yeah. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Yeah, not much interesting, I guess, if I'm not saying anything. But I do want, yeah, it's just something here to break up these two basins, and I think I'm getting close here. I do think that some of these need to be smaller. There. That's starting to look all right. Yeah. All right. So we can see, you know, that chain of hotspots, and so a cluster of hotspots. Like these aren't exactly the right spot, and you can see it here too, where there's, you know, there's a hotspot coming up there, and there's a hotspot creating this island here, and that kind of comes together where you have volcanoes, you know, probably throughout this little area here. And then there is going to be a little trail of dormant volcanoes going back this way into the into eventually the Polomian ice dome. Usually, so the idea is that hotspots usually the idea historically has been that hotspots don't move. And it's just the hotspot is staying still and then the plate is moving over it. But what we've seen is that hotspots do drift. So there is a bit of a drift in hotspots. And I think specifically for like the Hawaiian hotspot, drifting of the hotspot accounts for some of its movement that hasn't been borne out in testing of the plate itself. Hi, copyright infringement. You're trying to catch up. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I love hearing that. Yeah, I'm just going to add in this chain of volcanic islands that are coming from these hotspots as a way to kind of break up this significant basin up here from the rest of the Tyche Sea, and add, as I said, added a bit more of that interest. So now we will move from that to thinking about where are we? We want warp or distort. Okay. This one is beyond help. There we go. Let's throw this up on top. And I'm going to merge that layer down now that we have it. So now we need to work through the MOR that is between this, between the main, movement and the spreading, and the kind of northern portion here. Oh, it has like the clippiness. I guess how Plane Spotter describe it? Hicking, has the hickiness. Gotten down a little bit after I turned off the, what is it, StreamYard, getting rid of background audio. That I would be interested to know. All right, so I'm going to use a bright red for the MOR. Where do I have it? I had it between those two. Okay. And it is a little offset as well. And audio's been solid since you turned off noise suppression. Okay, amazing. So next time I'm going to use Google Chrome. I'm going to make sure there's no audio suppression. I'm going to control it entirely through the Ruda Central, and it'll be great. Beautiful. I'm so glad everyone stuck with me over the last few streams. I figured out this whole audio situation. And I really like the mic too. Like the Ruda pod mic is great. It's much easier than the other mics where you have to get like a whole like separate soundboard thing. Maybe at some point I will be prepared for that. And when I am, then I can plug that in to this mic because it has both options. But like with this mic, you can just plug in a USB-C and connect it directly into your computer, which is brilliant. Audio's been solid. All right, where to go? I've been drinking water, so hopefully I'm not making saliva sounds too much. All right, so this, wow, that was a sound, sorry. Okay, I believe that one stretches all the way across. I believe that is all the way across, and then I've got the two failed rifts, and I also want some islands along here. Or maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. I had an idea at one point, but don't know if that'll stick around. And this one will go from those islands through to here. So we may... Okay, so we got that failed rift through there. Got the failed rift through here. Don't imagine the islands in this area are going to be very significant. I'll include a couple. But yeah, if anyone has geography questions that I can riff on while I do this, but you know, I do imagine, what did I have before? Yeah, I do imagine, you know, it's going to be tropical along here and into here a bit, CSA, and then a bunch of CSB. You know, the highlands are going to be CSC, and there are going to be pockets of ET or like tundra, especially at like the highest points, because I believe that... let's turn off the outline for a sec. Yeah, 0 degrees is at 2.5 kilometers. If we have in the summer, you know, 22 or 21, it needs to fall like 11, 12 degrees to get to 10. So I guess like the highest kind of regions of these mountains that are yellow here are going to be ET in the basin itself. But yeah, not going to have any glaciers or anything in there. And then, oh yeah, I want to talk about the biogeography of the region too. So I suppose I can do that while I keep working on this. Oh, we got a question. Wonderful. Copyright infringement has caught up. What causes a rifting event to stop prematurely? So failed rifts are happening frequently. There's some pretty like major failed rifts. Major failed rifts also produce like significant river valleys, like the Mississippi Basin, for example. You can have failed rifts producing those kind of skinny seas, like you see with the Red Sea between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. What causes the theory behind, you know, rift kind of comes from slab pull. So the idea used to be that the movement of plates is largely caused by like convection of the magma beneath the plates, and I think, you know, it still has consequences. Like it's still impacts things. Though today it's recognized that slab pull, so the actual pulling of crust due to subduction, is the driver for a lot of plate motions. And so for the rifting to fail, usually, that crust could say start rift. So, I mean, here we go. Let's turn off that. No, let's turn off that. Yeah. So if you had, I don't know, like a rift start to form here. Let's pick a different color, I guess. Had a rift start to form here. It usually forms in areas of thinner continental crust. And you could just hit a point where the crust is thick and it stops rifting. So, some areas of the continental crust are going to be thicker than others. Those that are thinner are more likely to rift. And you could have a situation where, and what you tend to have with like supercontinents is that they, in the supercontinent cycle, is that when continents come together, they tend to rift from around the same place they came together. Because that is like the weakest part. The weakest part is where plates have sutured together in the past. So, rifts are kind of moving through, breaking through continental crust because the subduction is trying to pull them apart. And so that's where a lot of, failed rifts just kind of take through the continental crust, searching for, and not, they don't have agency, of course, but more like thinner or brittle, weaker parts of the crust that are easier to pull apart. In the case of this situation, there were failed rifts in certain places in the crust that made it easier for it to tear off. And there are other tectonic things going on that can have an impact. So the impact of Polomia was what caused this rift to fail and caused another one to open up because that impact and the movement of the plates caused stress on other parts of the crust where there were already failed rifts from the past. When this region in particular collided with the rest of what became Lanea in the construction of Uya. So some of these failed rifts can be very, very old and then reemerge later. So yeah, it's kind of like a broader thing. Though once you do have like a significant rift open up into a mid-ocean ridge, like the Atlantic or the Pacific, usually, that will stop. Usually, those mid-ocean ridges, tend to kind of persist until they get, kind of run over, and the formation of the next supercontinent. But mid-ocean ridges can shut down, usually because the subduction zone shuts down. And so what's happening here is like the subduction zone along here is pulling things in, and there is, crust that is spreading on both sides to kind of make up for that. And so if something happens to the subduction zone, then that rift could also fail. The subduction zones close. Sometimes subduction zones flip. And if you want to check out more of that stuff, I highly recommend World Building Pasta's, how to construct a plate tectonic history from the Apple Pie from Scratch guide. That'd be a great one to look at. But yeah, there are a lot of reasons why a rift may fail. But I think the subduction zone closes, or the rift doesn't find brittle or weak crust. Being unused to supercontinent crust. Okay, well, let's look at gallery. Boop. Wonderful. So, we have like this, oops. Always gotta mind my layers. There we go. So, Elea and Lanea collided along here, right? This is where the Urzategis are. Arukia collided with Zalea here, and Palomia and Lanea are continuing to collide here. Once these orogenies stop, those are the places where the continent has sutured together. And those are, or I mean, there's another one along here. And those are the places that are most likely to break apart. So they're going to like trade some crust at those orogenies and then drift away in different directions than what they came together in. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to break up exactly as they came together. And there are older connections as well. Like this upland range here is quite an old orogeny when this sort of body collided with Lanea in the, or, you know, this body here in the formation of Lanea. And that happened, you know, when was that? That was in the formation of Uya. So this is also a very good candidate for breaking apart. This face when your geologic history is super niche, you have a ton of questions, but your methodology is very different for everyone else's. Oh no. I mean, you know, whatever works for you. Well, that's what this stream is. This stream is for hijacking. You know, the Basin thing is just kind of a framework for me to talk about it. You know, talk about other climate and physical geography stuff. Though, you know, less of a geologist, not a geologist. You know, other people would have more to say about those sorts of things. So I do like the idea. I do like the idea of the sort of seamount chain here being near the mid-ocean ridge. I mean, the mid-ocean ridge is going to keep drifting to the south, but... Oh, oops. Bumped into the mic. Oh yeah, the biogeography. So something that, you know, came up last time and, you know, one of the comments from the first video and that I talked about in the footnote is talking about like aridity and how that affects the biogeography. So for this, you know, there's going to be a lot of shrubland, right? There are going to be some areas that are going to receive a decent amount of precipitation, you know, but most of those areas, most of this is going to be like shrubland or like shrub steppe sort of thing. So like there's in the Mediterranean, I think Gaig, Gaig, yeah, is a kind of like coastal shrubland where like a lot of the shrubs are very salt tolerant. So probably see a lot of that in the basin, especially in like the CS regions. There's also going to be, what's it called? Maki, is a kind of denser, like evergreen shrub region. Denser evergreen shrubland, and that'll probably be pretty prominent, especially on like the lower slopes of the mountains. But it eventually kind of thin out into like a shrub steppe or like an alpine, and then eventually like alpine grassland. Oh, you're doing the opposite of everyone. A real area concentrated in one country affected by geologically short periods of time. Yeah, I can see how like working regionally in a very concentrated area could create a very different flow. Let's find a hijack. Your map stands out to me in that so many thick and relatively unbroken island chains, such as at the edge of the basin. You know, what's the justification? Oh, like this one along here? Oops. Like this along here, at the edge there? So the Agathe has its own plate, and it has been, there are areas where it is kind of a transform boundary along it, but there are other parts of it where there is, subduction because the Agathe and the Tyche, collide at those spots. So those have been developing into islands for a while. So that's the reason, because the Agathe has its own ocean plate. The Agathe is very old ocean crust that's kind of left over from prior to the formation of Basera. So you do have this old ocean crust, and that old ocean crust is going to sink below the relatively newer crust of the Tyche, or I guess in this case the Neo Tyche. And yeah, that process over time has produced this kind of disjointed island chain, because there's areas of transform and where the crust is kind of sliding side by side, and then there are also areas where they have been subducting for longer periods, and that's what creates these kind of chunkier islands. And then for the island chains that run around the Astarte and the Aphrodite and Chione, I believe the one of the North Poles, the Chione. I mean, those have been building up for since the breakup of Uya in some cases. So you do have some like pretty large, I guess like Japan or like Papua New Guinea equivalent islands in those kind of situations. Yeah, so you just have these like large island chains that have been forming when these continents were like in the middle of when the land masses were in the middle of the supercontinent cycle. The island chains were not as like prominent or large. It's just now that we're really getting into the final stages of this cycle and the formation of Basera before the orogeny slow down. And maybe it'll be kind of stagnant for 100 million years after that. That we'll start to see those breakups happening. Am I happy with those? I am happy with those. Yep. Earlier on, I was also considering having like a Iceland equivalent more on the planet, but didn't really get around to it, and I wasn't really feeling it. Can't have all the features. kind of pen's that? Technical pen. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll have another small one on the other side there. And so, as with these, with the mid-ocean ridge, there's going to be, volcanism, as like, basalt and grabo and stuff like that is being built up. And you tend to see, you know, islands and seamounts and those sorts of things. So just kind of creating some of those features to kind of break up the, break up this basin around where the new crust is coming out. And then eventually, for the islands that are on either side of the mid-ocean ridge, they will, spread and get subducted and accrete. But they usually don't get that big, and some of them may erode down before they, become anything meaningful. There's, this is where like we've got a combination of the old failed rift there and the new rift. And this is where a lot of the kind of stress is happening, because that's, kind of the shortest point. Well, no, the least amount of stress is kind of happening there, but we do have, the MRR spreading from those sides. Usually the most stress tends to happen at the outside, because, this is turning faster. Well, it is moving more than that, and the difference in the rotational speed creates stress, and it creates neat things like the range and basin geography in the southwestern United States. Eh. This may have already been answered, but what do you plan to do with this map we're working on? Well, I'm planning on having an appendix at some point as a showcase for it. It is going to be important because this is the region that is right beside Arukia, and I mean parts of northern Arukia are actually a part of it, right? Around, so it's going to be important for that reason. At later times, I may do a sort of a biogeography video, like showing them the creatures that live here, because this is a distinct biogeographical realm from Arukia. So if we look at the map here, Arukia has its own realm. Arukia has its own realm. Zalea, over to here, has its own realm. What's the Arukian realm? Yeah, so Arukia has its own realm. Central Basera, has its own realm. Kind of goes in there, and then Ilea has its own realm. I think it's like that. So, each of these have their own biogeographical realms, and they have their own kind of distinct biogeographies, their own ecoregions and things, because they've been separated for a long period of time. So the animals that have developed on them, the flora, the fauna, are quite different. So it'd be interesting to kind of take some time and look at a different region out of Arukia after that happens. The other thing as well is that, we'll also look at the Dovians that live there occasionally, especially because, throughout the history of Dove, we're going to have people coming from different places, introducing new languages and new technologies and cultures and things like that. And one of the places that those people will eventually come from is going to be the Tyche Basin. Is there also a polar glacier biome? Yes, there is a Polomian bioregion. I mean, for the ice sheets itself, it's going to be a lot of small stuff. Algae that grow on the ice and stuff that eats the algae and those sorts of things that makes up the Polomian biome over land. It's like in there more or less. It'll be much more interesting on the ice shelves that are around it, and the relationship between the Keone and the land. So, when I talk about the sort of marine biogeography and the creatures that, exist in the sort of littoral, icy littoral, cryo littoral, live on the ice shelf and, transition between the sea ice. Though some of the sea ice is going to be quite thick. So, I'll have to navigate that. But, you can think of it as, the various animals that live on the sea ice in, in the Arctic or in the Antarctic, right? Like that's where we're going to see a lot of the biodiversity in, for lack of a better term, like the macro fauna, right? Like the large stuff, not like the microscopic stuff. Yes, I do enjoy the little islands that are strung along that rift. That is nice. There we go. Much too big. I know, Dane Hart. Very precise with these small islands. These would be volcanic, right? Yep. Yep. These would be old volcanic islands, from the magmatism, from, the rifting that happens. They would have been built up for, a while, and now they're just, slow eroding. I mean, there may be some that, are still, still have magma, but left over, maybe, they haven't, maybe there's some with chambers left, but others, those volcanoes will be very much, just kind of sinking back and collapsing into Tyche. And you got to be precise with the little islands. I mean, I imagine there are more, like, just like these, little jewels in the Tyche spread throughout that would, as mentioned before, be beautiful, beautiful spots to go vacation or live, really. I mean, what's it look like? Yeah, by and large, don't go below freezing in the winter, and they tend to be over 18 on average in the summer. So, very, very mild. Not too much like the Mediterranean, but, more akin to, what I'm used to. Writer 2, slightly unrelated, but what environments do you think will be on all those strung out islands at sea? Will animals travel from island to island, or will they develop their own environment? I mean, the flying ones will probably fly between them, though I'm sure, there are going to be local populations of smaller flying animals. I'm sure there's going to be ground animals that have, rafted there. There'll probably be some dwarfism or gigantism on those islands from some of the smaller critters. But yeah, they're not that far from the actual land masses to have too big. I mean, as I mentioned before, the distance between, the distance in this area, for example, is like 500 kilometers across. So, 250 kilometers at the widest to travel from one or the other isn't that extensive. This is also, the ice is not at its maximum, and it has been further before. So, some of these coasts have and could in the future get bigger. Oh, the islands on the main map. Yes. It may take a sec. There we go. The islands on the main map. Yeah. So, let's see here. I don't remember the exact. Yeah, so all of that stuff is part of the Aphrodisian. It's part of the Aphrodisian biogeographic realm, and it is composed of animals that fly in there and become flightless. It is composed of marine animals that breathe air, that have become terrestrial or more littoral. It's various creatures that have rafted there or rafted along them, as well as various plants from seeds or things that have been brought either by the flying creatures or floated there. So those will be very interesting to look at some point. Those will be quite distinct from the other. Those will be quite distinct from the other ones. I think it's what was it? Come on. There we go. I think it's like that or more. Oh, yeah, 45. Sorry. And this island here is a little bit of its own thing, but it has more in common with the Aphrodisian than the, you know, than the Zalaean biogeographical realm over here, or the Ilaean biogeographical realm over here. Yeah, I believe that's the breakup. So yeah, there's the Polomian, the Central Bassaran is in here, the Ilaean is here, the Zalaean is here, the Arukian is here, then the Aphrodisian is the string of islands on the outside. And I did make it on its own layer. Never mind. I forgot for a moment. Davian shark, yes, there will be something like that. Would the Davians be seafaring folk? Or such specifics not the focus yet. Yep, the Davians will be seafaring. I'm going to talk about the migrations, but they do start on Alea and then, spread out. Spread out from the north and from the south. And they're gonna use boats. They're not like ship faring or anything, and they tend to stay close to the coast, and it's very helpful that sea levels are lower than they would otherwise be. So there's coasts are larger and more islands are poking up. But Davians are was it legally distinct humans is the way that I'm kind of putting it. So, if humans have done it, then the Davians will probably do it too. Imagine the creatures on those islands would be unique and awesome to see. Yeah, very excited for those. Especially the ones in the South Aphrodite, I think will be interesting to look at. Okay, so the other thing that you can notice is certain biases I have when I'm placing these islands. Oh no. I think that looks better. All right, because we can see here that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 strings of 3. So we are going to deal with that. Because, they are very nice, but sadly... And there's also some regularity to those, which I want to get rid of the... So always good to look back at your work there. Non-copyright infringing humans. Yes, excellent. We talked about the Davians coming to Dove. Oh, sorry. The Davians come to Arukia, not to Dove. The Davians are, flora from fauna. Sorry, they're not plants. The Davians are fauna on Dove, and they come from Alea and spread from there in their migrations to the rest of Basera and, the Aphrodisian Islands. Need dice to help to remove those biases. Well, you can just kind of notice the biases and then get rid of them that way too. But in all honesty, I do like these two. Maybe I'll make the other one just two. Yeah, it's better. That's a little regular there. Yeah, it's looking fine. I notice I'm doing it over here as well. And I have it over here. Oh no, we got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I mean, yeah, but they look pretty much the same. So let's see where the thing is here. Oh, easy. Also, we don't want me to be like tossing dice on the glass table I have. That would not be fun. Model the number of islands in a cluster with a Poisson distribution. Yeah, that's true. That's a good idea. When I'm trying island chains, I'll roll dice for how many islands to draw. Yes, for people who don't have a glass desk, I think that would be ideal. Randomized fish number of islands. Spinning oneself to RNGs is never a bad idea. I do, yeah. So we've got these islands here. Let's add in some more little ones. And some other spots. That makes sense. There we go. That looks nice. Yeah, they are no joke. And I'm sure this phone would pick up all sorts of clattering noises. I don't have any dice, but I do have like an acorn. I wonder what that does. Oh, yep. I could hear that, so I'm sure that you could. Okay, so we have done some small islands for there and there. And now we got one more ridge to do. What time is it? Oh my gosh, 12:12. Okay, realistic question. Is it realistic to have an entire section of ocean with nothing? Asking both because of this world. Sure, you can have areas of ocean that don't. Oops. You can have areas of ocean that have fewer features. Um, relatively fewer features compared to others. Like, I'm not going to be putting anything into here, for example. But, there is still, and when you look at certain features, like, for example, in the Pacific, right? Like most of the Pacific islands are, in like the South Pacific, concentrated around the kind of subduction and rift zones. You've got, uh, the hot spots like the Emperor Seamount, the Hawaiian Islands, but you do have like relatively large areas of the ocean that don't have, significant landforms in them. That Iridian uses vector graphics for drawing the maps for higher precision. Is there a reason why you're using pixels? Just have access to. On the iPad, just when I have access to, I'm using Procreate. That's, kind of something I'm comfortable with. But even when I was making other maps, I just tend to use Photoshop. And the idea is like when you look at this map, this is kind of the distance you're going to be looking at it from, right? So, you're not going to be noticing a lot of the smaller features and things. Sometimes I do work in Illustrator. I work in Illustrator when I want to put text onto the maps. So in the showcase video for chapter 1, excuse me 1 sec. In the showcase video for chapter 1, when you see the labels on the map for like the Urzide orogeny and stuff like that, that I did in Illustrator and then put it back into Photoshop. So, I'm not necessarily concerned with scaling a lot of these things up. Like if I want to do something that's more regional, I'm just going to make a regional map. I think what Edgar was doing. We're talking about Bibluridian. Well, I think that's fair. But like what Bib and kind of Edgar are doing is like doing a lot more. What I feel like they're doing is more detail, just having one master map, as opposed to making a variety of maps, which is what I would be more interested in doing. Nothing above the surface specifically. It's a fair bit larger than the empty space south of Polynesia between Easter Island and New Zealand. Yeah. So, there are going to be surface features and there's going to be subsurface features, and that is going to depend on the geologic history of those areas. In the case of along here, there aren't going to be that many islands there. I mean, this is relatively young crust. I mean, the crust was around prior to that, but the previous mid-ocean ridge and all the islands have already been subducted, creating the most recent version, creating the Metrides here, or through the Metride orogeny. So there's not going to be any surface features that are relevant in that area. Maybe there's some coastal islands or something, but again, depends on the geologic history of your of the ocean plate you're working with. I'm going to be more sparse with islands along this one because it is older, so they'll probably be eroded away. Yeah, and did I do what? 1, 2, 1, 3, 1? I do want the islands there. Yeah, let's do another 1 then. Yeah, I mean, can't see a lot of these islands. That's why I'm not going to bother drawing that many of them. Oh, hey there. You didn't get filled in. And at some point, I'll throw Google Earth on my iPad, and we can explore that as well. Looking at the different ocean plates and the features on them. Okay, so what have we done today? We finished doing the outlines. We talked about the yes, we talked about the relative size. Talked through the addition or the accounting for a high pressure system during the winter coming off Agathy, though I didn't draw that in. So let's put that in real quick on this one. There we go. Just, you know, just to account for that. Also had some fun diversions and finally figured out the audio issues. That was super important. So yes, let's include that there. But I have to say, I do like that. I do like. I want that one to be 4. I want to have 4 there. It's my island. I can do what I want. There we go. I can't really see it, but that's fine. The raster painted maps look nicer than vector maps. Yeah, I mean, I could have done, you know, in all seriousness, I could have done these maps as vector maps, right? Like, you know, the very simple shapes. But I found that I had more control on the iPad while I was making shapes. I think it was with this syrup brush. Yeah, yeah, with this syrup brush. You know, making making these noodle topography shapes in order to kind of communicate, you know, changes in average elevation from sea surface level. Though I think it would have worked quite well if I had done it in Vector, but doing it in Vector on my laptop probably would have taken longer because I don't have a way to, you know, like I don't have a tab like a Wacom tablet or something like that, and my computer doesn't have like a touch screen for the laptop. So, you know, working on the iPad's better. I'm sure there's maybe there's like Adobe Illustrator for the iPad, but this iPad only has like 64 gigabytes on it. And a non insignificant part of that is taken up by the operating system. So, you know, there's also a space thing to consider. maybe at some point I'll get a new iPad with more space and I'll be able to, you know, incorporate that. But, with how like simple the shapes are here, especially for here, using vectors, could have worked quite well, especially working with paths in Adobe Illustrator. But I think it works quite well in raster. Oop. Learned Illustrator. Cool. Yeah, I tend to use Illustrator more. I tended to use Illustrator more when I was doing like UX UI design. That would have been 9-10 years ago now. So I haven't used it in quite a while, like consistently. But yeah. Except for the precise shapes and text. Yeah. I do find that the pathing tool in Illustrator for text, when you want to make text, curve along a path, is quite good, and it tends to be much better than the one in Photoshop, at least for me, for what I'm interested in. Okay. So next time we are going to do some very basic like sat color stuff. No, next time when we come in, we are actually going to start doing the climate stuff. So we're going to actually start like refining the climates that I have on, where is it? There we go. Actually start refining the climates that we have on this map here. And, applying some of the changes that we've been making with surface winds and precipitation. We're going to be taking into account those changes. And because we are working much closer than this map is, you can actually see the little islands. Yeah, let me merge those layers. There we go. Yeah, we're going to get more detail. I'm going to think about, the variations in there, when those variations start happening, including some of the ET areas, specifically in the main terrain. And, have some more tangents and off-topic conversation. So thank you, everyone, for joining me today for this stream that's gone on about a half an hour longer than usual, but I was having so fun. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. The comments help with the engagement. If you'd like to know when the streams are happening, I always post it to the Patreon and Ko-fi. You can subscribe for the Patreon as a free member in order to get the updates, because I've heard from some folks that they don't get the updates on YouTube. But I do post on YouTube on like Thursdays or Fridays when the stream's happening. I'm planning on doing a stream next weekend as well on January 18th. Same bat time, same bat channel, so you can come join me then. And look forward to the next video, which should be coming out on January 30th. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next week.